I would say let's get started. And yeah, welcome. It's good to see all of your faces. It's the new year, and this is the first. It's basically the kickoff meeting of the Mindful Tech Leaders this year. I mentioned we had about 12 or 13 RSVPs. I'm sure there will be a few more joining in. One told me he couldn't make it, so he will have a recording afterwards, so they can take a look at it as well. Right? So that's fine. Um, Good. So I think the meeting format today is, as you know, we have about 40-45 minutes, and instead of doing some last time we had some interesting talk and before as well, right? So I think Deepa is not trying again. So it's actually good to have more a group discussion on some important topics, because I know that there's always certain topics and everyone has some cool approaches in terms of how to deal with some of these topics, practices, and so on. So I figured, and then I think Vivek actually suggested a few topics, which was great. So I said, this is actually, let's give it a try and see how it goes. I think now Deepa is online. Deepa, hi, and then Richard also joined. I hope you guys can hear us. Very good. Yeah, and so let's have this as a discussion, because all of us have a lot of experience and knowledge that we bring to the table, and the idea really was then to basically exchange some of these ideas with a focus topic today, which is reflection. And I think I really like this topic of reflection. I know for myself, in the early days, I was always looking for what can we do next? I'm a doer, basically, and I want to do more stuff. But sometimes it's very important to also pause and actually reflect, and not just once, but actually make this a regular practice, because otherwise we might be doing a lot of stuff, too many things, and but we may basically walk or move in the wrong direction, and it's not helpful to us. And I remember this saying the old days when I was still at Yahoo, where a friend of mine told me exactly this thing. If you hop on the next bus, that's great, but actually make sure the direction is good where the bus is going, right? That was the thing, and I think that I've found quite valuable. And nowadays, reflection is, I don't see it too often nowadays in leaders, right? When I worked, for instance, a year ago in a startup here in Berlin, I didn't see, I often saw that we basically move very fast, boom, 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 not just on company goals, but also on personal goals, thinking about personal development, personal growth, leadership growth, those things. Um, and so the question is, there is this topic that you can do in all kind of different aspects and different tricks and ideas and methods that help. I actually teach quite a few different ones, but at the end there is no best practice or anything. It's completely individual. Everyone has different ways of doing it. And so that's why I think the value in discussion today, I hope, is that we can yeah, talk about this, and everyone shares a little bit on this experience. And by listening then to the others, when you may definitely pick up some helpful idea or impulse that you can take out of this meeting. And so at the end of the day, that's, I think, the value here in this 40 minutes that we have is basically you may get some interesting insight, but on the other hand, it's also good, I mean, to connect and see the faces. But obviously, I mean, it was for myself and then for some of the others here in the European time zone. It was already a long day, and I hope you guys didn't have too many Zoom meetings. Nowadays, that's one of the issues. It's too many meetings, obviously. So we want to keep this. We use the energy. I see there is a lot of energy here in the room, and then for Deepa, the day has just started. It's on the West Coast, so I think she's probably well rested And yeah, let's get started. Maybe as Vivek basically suggested also the topic. Maybe you can actually kick it off and share some of your thoughts, what motivated you. Also do a brief introduction just for the, if there's anyone in here who didn't see you before, maybe a few sentences about where you work and just to get a little bit of context.
Sure. Thanks, Rainer. So, hi, my name is Vivek. I'm from Berlin, Germany. Work as an engineering leader in Germany. I've known couple of faces here. I work closely with Martin here. I know Rami and obviously Rainer from his days at Zalando. Um, the reason I brought this point was this is quite interesting for me, especially reflections. And I was having this conversation with one of my mentors at the beginning of this year on what is their process of reflection. And they kind of steered me to this process. So I'll tell you a quick, I'll not be a big monologue, but a kind of simple. So I used to do this yearly reflections. So wonderfully, I did a reflection 2019, end of 2019. So January, 1st January 2020, that these are the things that I learned from my last year. These are the things I want to do this year. And obviously, I was not prepared for that 2020 year. And I was sharing this experience with my mentor, and I asked them what is their process. So, and this is something I started doing. Um, I would say in the last quarter. I would say from October 2020. So the idea that kind of really hit my head was I thought sharing in this group and then probably using that as a perspective to see what are your individual stories around reflection. So the idea was to kind of set up an appointment every quarter with yourself. It's like a walk. So I will have a 1 hour walk with myself every quarter. It's on my calendar. And I'm going to address few questions, which is quite simple. So it's in your calendar. It's a appointment that you have with yourself and you have these questions. Um, Question is obviously two are very obvious questions. So from my last 3 months or 2 months, whatever period you're reflecting on, what is the thing that I would like to continue doing or do more of, and what I want to do less of. But there is other aspect is to also reflect on what from my reflections of the past gives me more energy, what activities continues to give me more energy, and what drains my energy. And I think those are the two questions that should lead me to address the question of what should I be continuously doing or doing more of versus things I should be doing less of. And it was a quite a very, I think, very simple aspect. And I tried applying it in December this year, last year, 2020. So I set up this appointment on my calendar. I took a walk. It was a really shitty day here in Berlin. It was raining. It was snowing. I think there's no snow. It's really raining. It was like muddy. And I chose to like deliberately take my time. It was the middle of the day, so I canceled all my meetings during that time. It was very hard to do that. And Martin and some of you who have been in my current company understands that it's not easy, but I chose to do it. And I think what I did was instead of carrying a book, I just carried my phone and I used it a recorder to capture that. So I asked myself what activities and engagements allows me to gain energy and what drains my energy. And I pondered with that question for at least 30 minutes. I made some mental notes and I was just talking to myself. I mean, to a bystander, they were like, this guy is crazy. Just talking to himself, recording stuff. Maybe he's a YouTuber or podcast or, like vlogger or someone. And then I started thinking about, based upon that, what activities I can actually continue doing, which is obviously adding the support. And for me personally, one of the things was to meet new people and talk to them, learn about their stories. That gives me energy. And I found myself being in these meetings and interactions where I was not getting really genuine chance to connect with others and really understand their story. And that was a source of me to go out and seek out opportunities wherever possible through various mediums to do that and put it more prominently in my calendar, park it in my calendar so that I can use that to to obviously work on it. And additionally, what I did was change my calendar coding, so color coding on meetings which are basically potentially aligns with me to gain energy, and the meetings were potentially where I would lose energy. So, and I use that to reflect my previous week. So I can see a map on my calendar, and I can also show you there's just two colors. So red and green. Obviously, the red colors are ones that are draining energy for me, and greens are one which are kind of provide. Sorry, red is one which is kind of draining energy. Green is one which is gaining energy. And I have this kind of sense for energy meter now. So I can say, okay, in my week, I have like 60% of interactions where I'm gaining energy, and 40% of interactions which is like probably draining my energy. And I didn't know where to go from there, but I would just want to use it to collect data just to see what does it where does it lead doing all this. And I was so intrigued, and I started talking to different people. And that's where, when Rainer, I think you posted a question on the group, I felt it might be very interesting to hear what are individuals' approaches around reflection. I know some are very structured, some are unstructured, but I think in some sense we all do some reflection. So it might be very good to really bootstrap that discussion beginning of this year. And yeah, that's where everything emerged from, and that's the story I wanted to kind of put forward as a starting seed.
No, very good, and thanks for sharing. I mean, I like, of course, the data-driven approach with collecting data, labeling it, and then yeah, this is kind of helpful. Yeah, and I think it's actually it's also a very interesting thing because I'm sure when you do this exercise, and if everyone, I mean, this is really a helpful exercise just to reflect in terms of the aspect of energy, right? If you look at your meetings, your activities, is it draining or is it actually something that gives you energy back? And but I had one quick follow-up question before we go further on. What was the result in terms of the outcome? Was there any insight already when you looked at the first 2 weeks, or?
Yeah, I think for me, one insight that emerged very recently when I was organizing my calendar for the next few weeks was I try to park discussions, meetings, engagements, and work, which is gaining energy before an interaction, which I know will drain my energy. So that I'm already pumped up. It's almost like preparing for a drain of energy. So you're charging yourself. So imagine for one reason, I would love to have an interaction with Martin before I go to a big meeting, and that creates an energy for me. I would try to schedule that before this whole draining sessions begin. And I think these are not, when I say draining sessions, these are not negative connotations for me. It just kind of, it's more exhausting. It could be useful, but it's exhausting, and I need to do it. It's important. So it's the pattern I took away is, can I organize myself in such a way where I can create a good reservoir of energy before I go for these interactions where I will lose a lot of my energy. So that's the kind of insight I kind of landed onto.
Mhm. Very good. And I think Anka just joined. Welcome.
I,
Yeah, and then Charles also joined in between. Also welcome. Yeah, who wants to talk a little bit about their own experience around reflection and bring in some connect to this, add to it, or bring in some own ideas?
Yeah, maybe Rainer, I can be the next one because I will have to unfortunately leave a bit earlier since I have the next meeting at 6. So first of all, welcome everyone, and nice start of the conversation, Vivek. Quite very interesting, I have to say. So maybe first as a short introduction for those whom I didn't have chance yet to meet. I'm Lucas, based also in Berlin, working of course also in the tech industry for 400 startups in Berlin as a product manager. So also quite close with engineering. And regarding the reflections, I mean, like, so when you started talking, Vivek, it was like right away in my head popped up the idea, which I heard, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I read it on Tim Ferriss' blog, or maybe in one of his podcasts, about doing the yearly review or yearly reflection, and the similar concept of dividing or splitting all your past experiences from the previous year into two columns, positive and negative. And the idea there was that you just try to go through your calendar. It doesn't have to go into each single event, but maybe more any trips, any major meetings, any interactions with other people you had, and so on, and putting it, marking them either negative or positive. And then actually what was the conclusion there, that once you actually have the clear split, what you do the next year, that you try to avoid anything what you put as negative, and you just try to focus and make more of the positive things. And this was also pretty useful exercise. I have to say I did it once in such a manner that I really reviewed the whole year. Currently, I try to probably implement reflection on a more ongoing basis. So I don't want to wait until the end of the year and then reflect what I did wrong or correct, and try to do it either monthly, weekly, or even daily sometimes. And I just think one the difficult or tricky thing is how to really categorize these events into binary manner, that something is either positive or negative, because many times it's somewhere in between, right? So it was neither super positive or super negative. And the other thing what Vivek also you mentioned is that sometimes it's also very difficult to assess what's draining your energy. Maybe draining energy is more obvious, but what impact it will have for you on in the future, because some things maybe they are difficult, maybe they are draining energy, maybe we're exhausted after a meeting, but actually these are the right things to do, and they will get better. And you need also this kind of things, right? So if you think about having difficult conversations within your team, or maybe with your partner or whoever else, these probably are not super easy things to do. But somehow if you think, okay, they will drain my energy, I will be exhausted, I don't feel like doing them, they will actually, the impact of them you will see in some time. So I think this is a bit challenging, at least for me. And the last thing which I'm also trying as a last also tip from my side, I'm trying also to look at the things when I feel something is going wrong, or I feel better after certain things. I try to reflect on them daily, and to fix them as soon as possible. So try to avoid the things that, if I have a feeling something is going wrong, not to wait too long to course correct the things, right? So if I feel, okay, maybe my behavior is not proper, maybe I know my relationship, it can be with my wife, or it can be with a colleague or whatever, I'm trying to fix them as soon as possible. So because I know that in the future it will be worse, right? So it's sometimes maybe I don't have time, maybe I think, okay, it's not the right moment, but now I'm trying to remind myself, okay, there will be never a better moment, and it will get worse, or it will get more difficult if I wait. So I'm trying to maybe reflect or think about it and more often rather than wait. Yeah, that's it from my side then.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing, Lucas. I think what I heard, I think the interesting thing is now the concept of how often, what's the interval to reflect. I heard right away, daily, and I heard also weekly, I heard monthly, yearly. I mean, it looks like there's different ways of doing it. Yeah, and I think that the aspect of quick course correction is a good one as well, right? So it's real-time aspect. Yeah. I also see now Tiara has joined probably earlier. Also welcome, Tiara. Tiara actually is helping us in the mindful tech leadership community with content and finding good relevant content and posting also regularly, so we get more interesting stuff into the discussion. So welcome again, and thanks for helping with all this stuff.
Hello and thank you. Yeah, I hope I can post. I can always post something that useful for us. And yeah, happy to see you guys and happy to join.
Very good. Welcome again. Okay, who wants to go next in sharing some on topic of reflection?
So Rainer, I wanted to add a little bit to what Lucas and Vivek said. A couple of things came to mind, and one of them was what Lucas was saying, that sometimes it's hard to categorize events in the past as just positive or negative. And a lot of times, something that, to me, at least in the last year, something that came up as a negative usually also had a positive side to it. Like something happened which I wasn't proud of, but that led to me doing something that I was really proud of. So it was like, it was hard to just really create these as discrete events. So that was one idea. And I usually end up doing a lot of things, like what you were referring to earlier is like, what's next? Like for several years, I was really operating in that mode of what do I have to do next? What do I have to accomplish? And after I started to break away from that model in 2020, especially, I was looking at, can I get more joy from whatever I'm doing? Can I go deeper in something that I'm doing? And so when I look back, I feel really good about doing certain things where I was able to do that. But I sort of don't, in a way, don't have a very negative angle to any of my reflections, because it did feel like something was, when it was done sort of mindfully, done with sort of presence to whatever extent I can do. I think a lot of it felt like, well, I sort of did the best I could. And so I think in some ways I feel we like this frequency of reflection, also in what manner we want to do the reflection. In some ways, if you almost feel like you don't want to dwell on it for too long, because I've in the past felt like all my reflections were more sort of fault finding. Oh, I really messed that up. Oh, I didn't do this properly. So it was so focused on the negative that I almost didn't want to do a reflection. Anytime somebody said reflection, that would make me nervous. It's like, oh, I'm just going to have like this whole session of beating myself up. But I think this year it's been very different. So I'm still trying to understand what the difference has been. I'm not, I don't think I want to say that this data-driven approach is not the right one. I think it does give you a lot of signals in terms of what kind of interactions are useful and so on. But I think it's just in terms of self-reflection. I just wanted to add that thought, that I'm not sure if I have a good good method of doing it. But I think whatever I'm doing, I feel pretty happy about it. Like I do get some understanding of my own self. So
Yeah,
Oh yeah, just go
okay.
ahead.
Well, what I wanted just to add one thing, that it's true also that if you practice mindfulness more and probably kind of acceptance of what and being less judgmental, then yes, it's true that you see different events in your life like as not negative, non-negative, and it's like you have, yeah, it's more difficult to find the negative events because you just don't have such a connotation with what's happening around, right? So that's true. Also, that changed for me, I think, over the last two years. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to give an example, last year I had come to a conclusion that I needed to change at least the team I was working with. I'd been working with them for a while, and I was sort of in this stage where I'm not really applying myself. And then because of the whole shutdown and everything, it became really hard to make that move. And so in some ways in my reflection, I do see that moment as saying, well, maybe I just didn't try hard enough. But as I think about it deeply, it really gave, like, I stayed with the current team. I actually did a lot of different things that I anticipated I would do. I made some good connections, and in the end the project also did really well. So I kind of like looked at it and said, yeah, I mean, I kind of could look at it as a negative thing of not trying hard enough, but that gave me some way to kind of go deeper, which I wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay, yeah, cool. I also want to add to Vivek's story, because I really like setting up some regular appointment for making this self-assessment if you're on the right track in what you want in life and so on. Because I don't do this, maybe I should in the future. So I just thought about when I do this, and I think there are just two situations where I self-reflect on so not only on myself, but also about my purpose and where I want to be. And it's either when there is a bad emotion around. So maybe when I left a meeting and see, okay, maybe something went wrong, and I reflect whether I did something wrong, or when something really negative happens, maybe with your direct lead or with your team, then I kind of try to reflect whether this is the right thing that I want to do. But it's more this situational thing, right? It's not like, am I on the right track? So this is more like living without a plan and then questioning in the situation, is this the right or wrong? And the second is when I read books. So I read books quite seldomly, but mostly I then read books about relationships or some motivational books and whatever. And these are the moments where I then suddenly sit in my armchair and start to reflect about my life, and is this right and is this wrong? But I don't do this on a regular basis, and as I don't read that often, maybe this happens once, twice a year. I kind of have the feeling that this is really important, that you have something like a regular check-in with yourself, because I find myself quite often in such a lost situation. So I'm an engineering lead for like 60 years, leading people for 9 years. So I have the question, should I become a head of? Is this the right for me? Should I go back to be an engineer? Should I kick the whole IT industry at all? But these are just thoughts who arise. And it might be that a lot of you also know these thoughts. They always arise when there are bad situations, so when negative thoughts are around. And maybe this is helpful to have such reflection in a mood where you're just in a positive situation. This is just my thoughts on this.
Can I come in, Dr. Rena?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. And I could not really hold on now, because the three very, very interesting perspectives that's come in from Vivek, Martin, Deepa, and Lucas. Let me introduce to some of the people, because I'm joining this meeting after a long gap. I think after 2 or 3 months that I happened to join today. So I'm from New Delhi, India, and I'm basically a HR professional and a strategy guy. So I look at things professionally from the perspective of human behavior and relationships. But then definitely I do have some initiation into some spiritual thinking and what you call seekers attitude as well. So I think one of the interesting thing that's coming in is that first, Martin has really put in this thought that, do we really need it, or can we live the life without even reflections? Do we really need reflections? Should we be really getting into some kind of reflection? Is it necessary? Then second, aspect of it, this discussion came in from Deepa when she was talking about the utility of negative, so-called negative, uh, negative, what you call moments of life. When you think that, when you perceive them as negative, but then they are not necessarily negative, as she was saying that even the perceived negative events in the life had some very positive outcome. And when I thought about what Vivek was talking about is, putting up a time frame that, okay, let's meet myself once in a quarter and ask myself, okay, where are you right now? Are you living, or are you just breathing? So I think these three very different perspectives. I think 2020 was quite a eventful year for everybody, and including me. I think Dr. Rayner was a little more observant to that fact, because I've been kind of interacting with him quite often till about October, and after that I kind of uh, got into something different, and then we lost touch. But then 2020 was quite an eventful year, and I think from the standpoint of reflection, I think that what I have realized is that a reflection is like a performance appraisal. Now, how often should you appraise the performance? Should you have the performance appraisal every day, every month, every quarter, every year? Now, that's a question that we have to really think of. Every event in life has some short-term outcomes and some long-term impact. I think my learning from the 2020 was that we need to shift our focus from just short-term outcomes to the long-term impact of the things. Each moment that we live in, however negative that may impact, however negative that may sound to us, or that may we may perceive that this moment is doomed, but then that moment may have a purpose, and that's where I believe my learning from 2020 was that each moment has a value. The only thing is, how do we realize that value? Whether that we are realizing that value today, or tomorrow, or a year later, or maybe 10 years later, we don't know. So that's what I thought, because I found very interesting perspectives from what Vivek, Deepa, Martin, and Lucas was saying. So I thought, let me put in my thoughts as well. But it was pleasure. It is pleasure to be here with company of all of you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think the what has been said before, right? A value or a rating or a label is a short-term one, right? A different view, and that can be also different for everyone looking at the same thing. Can have all different labels and judgments about this short-term outcome, and then there is, as time goes by, you can always look back at different points in time, and then was it good, bad? Who knows, right? And even if in 2 years from now you conclude it wasn't good, a year later it can be again the best thing that happened. Who knows, right? So it's a good thing. As time progresses, who knows then what, if something is really good or bad. So, but maybe who wants to add something to it? I think Rami. Oh yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to go.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me well? Thank you. So a quick introduction to myself. So I think 2020 has been probably all year of reflection for me. So I think I can offer some personal experiences here, more on the process side, because discussing the importance of it and the objectives of it can be very different. But I figured out that after trying so many processes, my process has become super simple. that I don't even have to think about it. And I'm only saying this because I realize it works for me. It doesn't necessarily means it works for everyone. But why I'm saying that, so I used to be at Zalando, so that's where I knew Vivek, and that's where I also met Ankur and Rainer. And then I quit in July, and then I tried myself in an entrepreneurship program that was between October and December, and now I'm in Lebanon. So I'm somehow between Beirut and Berlin, and I'm working with my family business now. So speaking a bit of processes, I think I'm just going to name a few that I've tried. I tried creating different calendars, so I could even try to reflect on how many social events I participated in and how many different, I also had different projects. So if I was at Zalando or the other work, I would label them. That work that had its purpose, but then I dropped it, became too much overhead for the value of it. Then I tried to set 2 hours every Friday from 5 to 7. That's like blocked, where I'm just going through the past week, kind of like reviewing what I've done, the activities I've done, the people I've met. I also focused a lot on energy. That became like probably the only KPI I looked at. Is it draining or is it giving me energy? And that was the simplest basis I based my decisions on, whether to proceed with another activity or with another person. And finally, now I reached where I realized that, I mean, that also worked for me for quite a while, but then again became an overhead. And the only thing I took out of it is that I cannot force myself to do reflection. I then started learning to, and I think that falls into mindfulness and being aware of yourself, of your body as well. If I would feel a tingle somewhere, or if it would feel like even a small tummy ache or a small headache, I would just take a walk. I would just maybe do sports, do whatever. Sometimes I put music, sometimes I don't. I just really pick how I am in the mood at that moment in time. And I just deal with it. I reflect on it, whether that takes 5 minutes or that takes half an hour. It doesn't matter as long as I'm over with it, because as soon as I do that, I can go back to whatever I was doing and do it much faster, much better, much more focused. And for me, that became the simplest process. Just to recap, whenever I feel that I need to reflect, I do it. And it's that simple for me. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can I quickly can introduce myself because I kind of forgot this. So I'm Martin. I'm an engineering lead at Zalando. So from time to time, I work together with Vivek. So there might be a lot of Zalandos around here. Just a question to you, Rami. How do you do this then? Oh no, let's start the other way. So I often find myself in a situation where I have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and in the end, I feel so exhausted after 9-10 hours that I actually have no time to think about things, and then I just open a bottle of beer or whatever, and then watch some TV, and then I go to bed. So how do you do this? How do you find the time? Because I mean, I usually have back-to-back meetings, and even if I try to make out of office blockers, sometimes I have then things to do. So I'm always in this, I don't have time to die, I'm too busy mode. So how do you do this to find some time for this?
I couldn't, and partly the reason why I decided to quit, because I realized that I couldn't change the way that the company works, which was forcing me to doing all these meetings. And again, I'm not saying that it's bad. Actually, there is people who work much better with back-to-back meetings. It just didn't work out for me. And that was, as soon as I noticed that, I was like, okay, then it's not for me. And I started looking for different work. That's it.
Okay,
sorry,
cool.
I couldn't help more.
No, but I mean, this is already help, right? So this already gives the trigger. So you just change the environment,
Yeah.
which could be a super proper solution. Cool,
Can I shortly add to that? I know I don't want to take away chances for the people, but I think I also saw a lot of connections of reflection to a negative outcome. And I say that because I often find people said, oh, I don't want to do retrospectives or reflection because I don't want to go and ponder on a negative event or failure. So essentially, there is this commonality around postmortem to a reflection, that we do reflection whenever something wrong has happened or something negative has happened, and we potentially treat it as a postmortem, because sometimes uh, for a lot of people postmortems are not easy. It's a very in your face moment to realize how we can do better, but first you need to go through the process of understanding what happened. So but I want to just surface a part where Martin mentioned about reflecting on things which really worked and which was positive. And I think those are essentially what Ray Dalio kind of puts up in his book, is a moment to think that can a principle emerge from that. So I found a success, or there was something positive that happened, and I started reflecting, because am I looking at a pattern? Am I looking at a practice? Am I looking at a at a structure which I can leverage for my future interactions? And I think this is probably a very interesting perspective, because now I look forward for those reflections, even if it's a positive one. I don't say, oh, I will only do reflection when something negative happens, but I want to do it periodic. Maybe for some people it works, for some it does not. And if something positive happens, I definitely want to do reflection, because now I need to think about uh, a pattern that will probably can be applied, even if it applies for negative one. So what should I avoid, right? So what Charlie Munger tells is like a circle of competence. Like I want to avoid things I know I will avoid because it will be a failure for me. So maybe figuring out that shortcuts, figuring out that places in time and opportunities where something wrong can happen and I can't avoid it. And can I use this as a template? Can I just zoom back and say, okay, is this applicable across parts of my life, parts of my interactions in life? And I just want to land this as a comment, because I really felt very interesting perspective, because there's no one size that fits all for sure in reflection. Um, but I think there is a kind of a connotation around reflection equivalent to a postmortem kind of approach.
Maybe Anke, Charles, or Richard, do you want to add something?
Yeah, it's Richard here. I'll maybe introduce myself, say a few things. So I'm a career CIO, basically, work for lots of different companies. I think a few things I would say. I think it's important that we don't see when things go wrong as a negative thing. Actually, all the successful people that I've met have become more successful because of their failures. And so every time something goes wrong, that's I see that as a learning opportunity. And it's important, for example, with the team, to set that up in the right way, that it's not, you'd never use the language post-mortem. That's got perhaps negative consequences. But if you say it's an opportunity for us to learn, a learning review or reflection, or obviously if you're doing sprints retrospective, that's a positive opportunity to learn something and improve the way the team works. So I think that's definitely one thing to get into the cycle of doing. If you do, say you're doing a 2-week sprint cycle, then obviously you'd be doing that retrospective at the end of the 2-week sprint. So that's a positive thing. The other thing that works for me is back-to-back meetings. Was mentioned, big challenge. I think I've had that challenge in my life, and you can't always influence all the meetings that you go to, but I think it's important to keep some time free in your diary to step back. I particularly try and do that after big, like, strategic meetings. Of a leadership team meeting for an hour, I like to sit down after that and just think, what did I learn? What do I need to do as a result of that? Because otherwise you lose the opportunity and you never improve for the next meeting if you don't spend the time to reflect. The other thing that seems to happen naturally with me more and more is just going to sleep with a problem, or going to sleep with what's happened during the day and waking up with some insights. I don't know if this happens to you, but I think that whole process of subconscious processing that goes on overnight when you sleep can often reveal insights either in your dreams or then in the morning. And I think it's important to journal those straight away. I try and get those straight down. What are the actions? What are the things I need to follow up on as a result of the insights I've had overnight? That, for me, is I've developed that skill, I think, more and more as I've got older. So I think that's another one that kind of works for me. So a few things I'll share there.
Very good. Yeah, no, I think this is also a good point, right? If you don't reflect after these meetings, if you have these back-to-backs and there is no reflection happening, it's not even a break that you need to just get some rest and relax, but it's actually that if you don't have a chance to right away when everything is fresh, that you really reflect what's happening there, that insight might be lost. I think that's a good one. I think.
Well, I think just to come back on that, I think my belief is we should constantly be working to improve ourselves. And the only way you do that is by reflecting, learning, and changing your behavior or the way you do things, the process you use, the techniques you use, whatever, the next time you have that situation. And if you're not doing that regularly, either on your own or with a coach, with a mentor, then that's fine, but you're probably not going to see a significant increase in performance. And the way we get success in careers is by improving ourselves. If I'm looking to recruit someone, I'm looking for the self-learners. I'm looking for the people that are improving and working on themselves every day, because I know as soon as they join the team, they'll add something to the team and they'll keep improving. So that's my belief.
I would like to add just a quick thing that could become maybe a topic for next time, based on this, like how you can always change and evolve and improve yourself and learn more about your emotions and your behaviors and controlling them and everything. But I think what I struggled with, what I then understood, but I would say I'm still struggling with, is how not to lose yourself while you're doing all that, which brings the whole topic of how you can stay authentic with yourself. So then your whole interactions are also authentic with the other people. So maybe that could be a topic for next time. I would be interested.
Me too, because Richard, while you were saying this, actually, I mean, our job requires that we continuously improve ourselves, right? We get better and better, and I'm really good at optimizing myself and that self-reflect and so on. But I have the fear that I sometimes come to the point where I ask myself, or find myself in a situation where I'm super optimized in a lot of things, but I realize that I forgot to live, and my life is over, and I'm super optimized, but actually the whole part that was the reason why I was here is over. Maybe this is a good topic for another session to discuss this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I encourage you guys to leave these topics as a comment, right? And I'll basically keep a list of them, and they're all good, right? And we can use them in an upcoming meeting. And since we're running over time already a little bit, maybe we do one more sharing before we conclude. It's maybe Charles or Anke. Do you guys have anything on your mind? Or
Yeah, I can try. Hi, I'm Ankur. I was also working at Zalando with Rami, Vivek, and Martin, and Rainer. Now I'm working at Delivery Hero, still in Berlin. Um, yeah, I've realized, I mean, I don't reflect so often or so regularly, but there were times like when I have really reflected and like just kept days to just reflect. And what I realized was that I always used to go back to the purpose of life. Like, what is my purpose? What am I, why I'm doing what I'm doing? And then I always land up in the like super existential question: why is there something or instead of nothing? Like, what are we really doing here? And when I think about that, then I somehow I took that and I said that, okay, what I'm working, and my work life and my personal life are different maybe, and my work is not super important. Like what Richard was also saying, like we have to keep on optimizing. I was at one point very stressed about work, and I used to like feel that I have to optimize to the best of my abilities to perform better. But then at some point, I don't know what happened. I said, okay, this is not so important. I have a job, I have to do it well, but I don't have to get stressed about it. And I think that was a cool thing, because after that I stopped worrying about work. I said, okay, this is work, I can handle it. And now I'm super stress free, so even if it's meetings or meetings after meetings, I just take them one at a time. And after that I think, okay, what was my behavior? Was there anything wrong in my behavior? I only focus on my behavior and how I can improve on that. But I don't worry about results so much. So I think because I'm working with a team, and I usually make sure that the team is taking all the decisions, and then if you give them the right empowerment, then usually the impact is always good. So I mean, most of the times we fail, but I don't worry about that because I know that in the long term they will succeed. It's only like in the intermittent that we are failing. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, and I think people all smile when they heard "Don't worry." There is this. It's like lifting, right? It's lifting up. Don't get too worried about results. Yeah, that's a good point, right? And that makes life easier. And it's at the end of the day what we're coming here together, right? It's being mindful of the current moment, and then at that point there is actually no goal. It's just the current moment, what's left, right? And that removes a lot of pressure. But yeah, I mean, what you also mentioned, the reflection part is happening. You focus, for instance, on your own behavior. That's a good thing, right? And of course, you can then, based on reflection, think about other ways on that you want to change this consciously, different decisions. So also very cool. Good. Wow, it's a lot of stuff. So I took some notes, and what I will do is I will also try to distill some of these ideas and attach them to the meeting notes. I think there was quite some good ideas in there. It's a long list that I compiled here. I need to structure it a little bit, and then yeah, I think you guys hopefully got some also insights and ideas out. I think that's great. And yeah, and then we would.
Rainer, I want to leave some suggestions for next some of our next meetings. So just on our regular this thing, right? The a message board. I can we can have some discussion there. Because yeah, I think one of the follow-up things that came to my mind based on what Richard was saying post the meeting, I'll just say this very quickly, is as I'm kind of starting to manage people and figuring out how I can be effective, I think one of the other skills is to give feedback. So quick feedback that can be effective. But when I looking at myself as a junior engineer, I did not know how to take feedback. I feel like there is a art of giving feedback as well as receiving it, and I think that could also be an interesting topic for us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean that topic is very popular, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's. I mean what you can do, and I'll share later. You'll see it in the activity feed. We can. It's usually helpful if we use all those discussions and comments on this event, so it's all collected in one place. And I probably do also a small post around some of the ideas, so that we have it also as a reference. We have the recording. And yeah, please suggest new topics. I go through these comments, actually all of them. So I'll actually take this time and review it. And you can, of course, also ping me directly. And then we'll figure something out in terms of the topics. And yeah, I think now we see we're a little bit over 5-10 minutes. Maybe we need 50 minutes the next time, just to have a little bit more space, because once the discussion actually starts, there's so much interesting stuff coming out. Timing is always tough then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good, very good. Then, yeah, then I would thank everyone today for joining, right, and staying here with us in this 45-50 minutes that we spent together. I enjoyed the connection. I actually now feel more energy, to be honest, right? So it was, for me, it was my experience, not training. So it felt good this time together, and I hope you also felt similarly for you. So it's actually it's a refreshing meeting, even if it's late for most of us. It's late in the evening, and so that's a good thing. And then we'll connect back in 2 weeks from now.
Great. Thanks, Rena.
Yeah. Bye. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for organizing.